Hi, I'm Lex and welcome to Sandals and Steel-Toes. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to tie up your tomatoes using a string T-post method. I knew I wanted a different way of tying up my tomatoes this year that was more hands-off, didn't require two people to lug heavy fences around, and not using tomato cages because really they're not big enough and strong enough to support giant tomato plants. So I wanted something that was easy, efficient, cost-effective, and something I could use year after year. So I started to look up ideas on what are some methods that I could use to string up my tomatoes. After lots of searching, I came across one that I like the most and seemed the most effective for my current lifestyle, which is using rebar, T-post, and string to set up a nice trellising system for your tomatoes. I found this on ladyleeshome.com, so I'll link that website down below so you can check out her blog and the how-to to set this up. But so far, all of the setup and gathering the supplies from the store, bringing them home, getting them put in the ground, I've done that by myself. So if you are a person that doesn't have help or you like to just work in the garden on your own, this is something that you could potentially do. It's easy and it seems like for me it'll be really good maintenance long term on trellising my tomatoes. And probably one of the most beneficial things of doing it this way is you can use the supplies year after year. You might make an initial investment at first if you have none of this. So before we get started, I'm going to show you all of the supplies and talk about how we put it together. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the T-post. If you don't know what a T-post is, this is it. It is a metal post that has this crossing at the bottom, which is your T, and this part from here downwards is what gets drove into the ground to support this thing. You can find these in various sizes from your local hardware stores or farm stores like Tractor Supply. This size here is a 6-foot T-post, so I'm 5'10", it's just a little bit taller than me. When I drive this into the ground, the final height's gonna be about 5 feet. Now, when you're doing the string trellising method, you have to keep in mind what kind of tomatoes you're growing. Are you growing an indeterminate, which means the tomato will just keep growing and growing and growing as tall as you can go, or a determinate, which means it has a determined size of how big it's gonna get, which could only be, you know, a couple feet. Now for this string trellising, the tomatoes I'm growing in majority are all indeterminate varieties, meaning they could go up to 10 feet tall if I allow them to do that. Because we already had so many of these 6-foot T-posts on hand, I wasn't in a position to go to the store and buy like 20 more 8-foot T-posts. So I'm just gonna use mostly what I have. And that also means my trellising system will be only about 5 feet tall. For me, that's okay. I've made a decision that when my plants start to get too tall for this trellis, I'll probably just top them, meaning I'll cut the tops off, which will allow more energy to go into the plant itself. It'll get bushier, produce more. So that's okay with me, but if you wanna have walls of tomatoes, you might wanna look into getting a taller T-post. So like I said, they come in different sizes. They have a 6-foot, 7-foot, 8-foot. There are other options to kind of use this same method with different materials and just put it together maybe a little bit differently. So we have our T-posts. The next thing I want to recommend purchasing if you don't have one is a T-post driver. This is gonna go on the top of your T-post and this is what you use to hammer it in the ground. Now, you don't have to use one of these. We purchased one this year because we were building a 230-foot fence around my garden, so it made sense for us to use this. We had lots of T-posts to drive in. But if you only have a couple T-posts, you don't need to make an investment in one of these things. You could just use a hammer or a mallet to drive the T-post in, but be careful because I don't want you to hurt yourself. All right, so now we're gonna talk about the rebar. The rebar here, which is 10 feet long, is what the support on the top of your trellis is gonna be. So this is what is gonna be on top of your T-post, and your strings are gonna hang off of this. So I picked up a 1/4-inch rebar pipes from the hardware store. They're 10 feet long. They were about $5.80 a piece. So again, depending on what your size of your garden is and how many tomatoes you're trellising, you might just need one of these for a 10-foot long section, or several, again, just depending what you're doing. Any initial investment that you're making up front, you can use year after year. This rebar is not going to break down. It's very strong. Gonna be able to use it. One thing to keep in mind if you're hauling rebar home from the store is how are you gonna get it home? We have a truck, so I was able to slide it into the truck bed and it stuck out the back. This isn't really bendy. yeah, I can't bend it. So it's not really an option that you could like bend it to get it into a vehicle. So definitely keep that in mind on if you want to go with the rebar, how are you going to get it home? I was able to find this at the hardware store in the lumber section. So if you're looking for rebar, check out the lumber section and you should be able to find it there. Okay, so next we have our PVC pipe tees. So this is a 1 1/4 inch tee, and this is gonna sit on top of the tee post. So you have your tee post, you have your 1 1/4 inch tee, PVC tee, and it goes right on top. It fits. If you get anything smaller, it's probably not gonna fit on top of this T-post. These are used in plumbing, and you can find these at your hardware store in the plumbing section. So again, it's a 1 1/4 inch PVC tee. And then the last and probably most obvious thing that you're using with a string trellising method is string. String or twine or something rope shaped that you can use to tie up your tomatoes. So for the tomatoes that I have already worked on tying up, I actually used a nylon clothesline string. It was a 200-foot roll, and with that I was able to do 27 tomatoes that are about 5 foot off the ground with the support. You can do that math, but it was a 200-foot roll. For my example today, I'm going to use this twine because I ran out of this kind of rope, but I will go back to the store and get some more of this because again, I like that it's strong, it's durable. I can likely keep reusing this rope for at least a second year, I think. So again, it's an investment, whereas this twine is gonna break down over this year. It might not even last the full season just after the weather and all the things that can happen to it. But for today, this is what we're using. And then you'll probably want some type of snips or scissors that you're gonna use to snip your twine as you're cutting it, or your rope or your string. And I'm also kind of killing two birds with one stone, and as I'm tying up these tomatoes, I'm actually pruning them at the same time to do a single stalk, and we can talk about that another time. I'm here, I'm working on the tomatoes, I might as well prune them while I'm doing it. Okay, so now that we got all of our supplies out of the way, we're gonna start setting up these trellises, and I'll show you just how simple it really is. Okay, so first thing first, you're gonna wanna measure out where your T-post is gonna go. Since I'm continuing along with my row here, I do it a really easy way. I lay down the rebar next to my last post, and I find where my next post needs to go. You can measure this, but I'm not. So I want it to overlap a little bit. And now I got my T-post and my T-post driver, and I'm gonna put it in the ground about 2 inches inside of where my rebar stopped. So quickly, before I hammer this in, I'll just show you kind of a close-up. So I laid my 10-foot rebar starting here, so here's my last post. And it's about 2 inches inside of it, inside of the post, because remember, we have to slide it into here. So we need some slack to do that. And then we go 10 feet down, and same idea. Here's my rebar, and here's where my post is gonna go. And so I don't wanna put the post at the very end of the rebar because then there won't be enough room for it to slide into the T. Okay, so now the fun part of taking my T-post driver and banging these into the ground. Okay, so my T-post is in the ground. It's secure. So we're good there. But this post does seem a little bit lower than the others. I am on a slight slope coming down, so it seems a little bit shorter. I'm okay with it being the height that they're already going to be set up is around 5 feet. But again, if you want taller tomatoes, get taller T-posts for that. So now we're going to take our PVC T, the 1 1/4 inch, and this is simple. You just set it on top. So the rebar is going to go through here, and when I slide the rebar through, I'm going to lift it up just a little bit like this so that I can get 2 pieces of rebar through this pipe here. So I've got my rebar, and it's as easy as sliding it in to the one over here. that, and sliding the other end on this side. So I've got my rebar in the post. And here's the other end. And there is some overlap here. Again, you can measure it out to get it, you know, more tightly flush, but I'm okay with it sticking out a little bit on either side. Makes me feel better that this is going to be secure. It's a little bouncy, but that's okay. So now the last part is tying the string. So what I like to do is just loop my string around the top at first, so I have two sides that I'm working with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my string and I'm going to tie it down around the base of the plant. I'm going to move my mulch out of the way, take the cut out end of my string and tie it loosely around the base. You don't want to tie it too tight because you have to think about that this tomato plant's going to grow, so you don't want the string to cut into it. Here's my string tied around the base of this plant, and there's a lot happening with this plant. I haven't pruned it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and prune it real quick to remove the lower leaves, and then I'll show you how you tie it up the string. Cover the bottom of the base back up with the string underneath the soil level if you can. That's just going to help it keep it in place. So now we have our string, the other end of the string that's still attached to the spool, and I'm going to cut it about right here, so about a foot of slack. And the reason I'm doing that is because in case this string becomes loose over time, or I need to fix it or whatever, I just have some slack to play with so I'm not too short. Cut my string. And I want to make sure that it's taut. Make sure it's taut and tight. And I'm just going to do a loop around and just simple knot. Not going to put too many little knots in here because, again, just in case I ever need to come back and adjust, I don't want it too tight. So simple. So we have our string here, and again, I like to use white. You can actually see the white. This twine is a little bit hard to see. But now I'm just going to gently take this plant and wrap it around the string as high up as it goes to this point. So my tomato is tied up. You can see here's the string, and it's gently wrapped around this main stem here. And surprisingly enough, I chose my example sidekick here, this dark galaxy tomato. It actually grew, I didn't get to pruning it soon enough, so it actually has two main stems, which is fine. This method works good with a single stem plant, but if you have two main stems, all I need to do is just follow the same process with the second stem to support this one, because as it becomes larger and heavier, this stem will ultimately. So I follow the same exact process with the string, tying it up at the bottom and up for the second stem here. So now I have two main leaders on this dark galaxy plant with all of the lovely blossoms coming on, so that's pretty cool. And it is well supported, so now at this point I just have to make sure I keep pruning it. Big other suckers that come off the sides are also either going to be supported or I prune them off. So here are the two knots for this one plant. So now I'm gonna go and tie up a couple more plants along this row just to repeat the process, show you how it's done. And I hope that you are able to follow along and try this out yourself sometime. Section of my tomato patch, I actually purchased the 7-foot T-post from Tractor Supply because I knew I wasn't going to have quite enough to finish what I was doing, so I decided to do the 7-foot post over here. It's a much smaller area. This section should yield me some taller, indeterminate tomatoes. So for reference, you can tell I'm 5'10", and this is just a little bit above me. So probably about 6 foot is what we got out of this one using 7-foot T-post. So you always have to take into account the amount of post that is going to be drove into the soil. So after all that, it was pretty easy to put up all of my posts, all of my rebar, and all my PVC tees. It's gonna take me a couple days to go back through and actually tie everything up, but at this point, all of the hard work is done, and it was super simple to put in myself. If you're thinking about doing this and are wondering what is the cost investment for a system of this method. So speaking from my example today, oh, that's a cute birdie. Hi, birdie. There's a bird perched on my new trellis. Oh, okay, now flew away. The 7-foot T-posts were about less than $6 a piece. The 10-foot rebar was a little bit less than $6 a piece. And PVC tees were about $1.80, somewhere close to $2 a piece. So if my math is right, that is about $22, maybe $25, just depending on your area, for one 10-foot section that you could probably get 5 or 6 plants in there that are spaced about a foot apart. So if you have a small garden, it could be a great option. If you have a really big garden, it's also a really good option, because for me, this is an investment that I felt I was comfortable making year after year. Really the only thing that I might have to replace is getting new string, but I think this white clothesline string that I use will probably hold up for this season and maybe even one more season after that. So I'm all about making things as simple as possible in the garden, reusing materials, repurposing things, knowing that whatever kind of investment that I make now is just going to help me in the long run. And that doesn't just mean money investment, that means time investment. Doing this trellising system, I really am hoping that it's just easy to be able to continue to just wrap the plant up the string as it grows versus having to, get different ties and clips to tie up my plants to different kinds of supports and the tomato cages. So I hope this video was an encouragement to you and you try this out. And if you do try it out, please leave a comment, let me know how it goes. And if you've done this in the past and have a suggestion that may be helpful to me or the viewers here, please leave a comment letting us know that as well. So thanks again for coming to my channel, Sandals and Steel-Toes. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, where I'm posting lots of gardening content every single day. YouTube, it's a little bit more sporadic, but I super enjoy making these videos and sharing what I can when I can with everyone out here. So please like this video, subscribe to my channel for notifications of new content when it comes out, and I hope to see you back again real soon. Do something you love today, everyone. Take care. Bye.